Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we, really get into the source material on important topics. Ever read something, maybe a news piece, and then 5 minutes later, poof, it's gone. Or maybe you've wrestled with a book in another language feeling like you're just swapping symbols, not really getting it. Well, today we're doing a deep dive into something pretty fundamental, but honestly often overlooked. Reading in the EFL classroom. English as a foreign language. It sounds simple, reading, right? But it's way more than just figuring out words and the things we'll talk about. They're vital for anyone learning a language or frankly just anyone trying to keep up with all the info thrown at us daily. So our mission today is to sift through our sources, pull out the key things teachers need to think about, different ways to read, strategies that actually work, how to check progress, even how tech is changing the game. The goal is really practical. How do we make reading activities effective and, dare I say, engaging?
Absolutely. And it's important to say right up front that while our main source focuses on that EFL context, a lot of these ideas, they apply everywhere. How we read, how we understand, whatever the language. It kind of brings up a big question, doesn't it? What does it really mean to read well today?
Yeah.
It's about getting the meaning, yeah, but it's also about being flexible, changing how you read based on what you're reading and why.
Okay, so let's unpack that. If reading is so basic, is there like one right way or does it shift? I mean, traditionally, it's one of the big four skills in language learning, right? Listening, speaking, reading, writing. And yeah, it's always been seen as key for students to grasp written messages properly. It's about meaning making, not just word recognition.
Yeah, that's the heart of it, exactly. And no, it's definitely not one size fits all.
Yeah.
Think about it the way you'd read, say, a quick email for info should be totally different from how you tackle a long, complex article arguing a point. So teachers need a whole range of skills and strategies. They need to help students fire up the right mental connections, what we call schemata, basically your background knowledge on a topic. That's how you get to full comprehension. It's about tailoring the process, making your brain kind of mesh with the material.
And that connects to the whole L1-2 thing, right? Your first language versus your second.
Oh, absolutely. That link between L1 and L2 reading, it's huge. If a student's first language is similar, maybe the alphabet or sentence structure, it can actually give them a leg up in English reading, a boost.
Right.
But if their L1 is really different script, different cultural ideas about reading, the teacher has to be aware of those potential, maybe roadblocks isn't the right word, but differences.
Yeah.
The job then is to build bridges, use the strengths from their L1, find those friendly bits in what they already know linguistically.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I first started thinking about this, I sort of assumed, okay, reading is reading, just do more of it. But the source material really breaks down two quite different approaches. And understanding this difference, it feels like a real key. So let's explore these two main types, intensive and extensive reading.
Okay, let's start with intensive reading. Think of this as putting the text under a microscope. You're deeply involved, looking inside the text itself, focusing on tiny linguistic details, grammar points, how sentences connect, using things like however or therefore, those discourse markers, pinpointing key vocabulary. It's careful, it's thorough. Often you reread parts. The goal here isn't just practicing reading, it's actually building language knowledge.
Okay, so it's more like language study through reading.
Exactly. But it's not without its critics. Some researchers, like Alderson and Urquhart, pointed out that if it's misused, if it just becomes a trigger for grammar drills, then it's maybe not reading at all. And here's the really crucial bit, the big drawback. If intensive reading is all a student does, or if it's done badly, it can totally kill their motivation. It just becomes this slow, painful exercise, focusing too much on every word, every grammar rule. It can actually make students start to dislike reading in English.
Wow, okay. So it can be counterproductive if you overdo it.
Massively. It can lead to really bad habits like super slow reading, getting bogged down. And yeah, it tends to be boring, which, is the enemy of learning.
Right, motivation is key. So how does that contrast with the other type, extensive reading?
Okay, so extensive reading is almost the opposite philosophy. Here, the idea is to read large amounts of material, lots of it. It's often encouraged for reading outside the classroom, like at home. And the focus, it's on getting the general idea, the overall understanding. Crucially, you're not supposed to stop and look up every single unfamiliar word. You read for flow, for the main message, maybe for pleasure.
So more like how you'd read a novel in your own language.
Exactly. There were these 10 characteristics laid out by Day and Bamford way back.
Yeah.
Things like students read as much as possible. There's lots of different stuff to read. Students choose what they read.
Student choice,
Yeah,
okay.
choice is big. The purpose is usually enjoyment or getting general info. Reading is its own reward, not just prep for a test.
Mm.
The material should be within their grasp linguistically. It's usually done individually, silently. The reading speed is faster. Teachers need to explain the goals, and importantly, the teacher acts as a reading role model.
That role model part feels important, showing that you read too.
It is. So you see the contrast. Intensive is deep, detailed, language-focused, slow. Extensive is broad, general, meaning-focused, faster.
So are they like enemies
It
or do they work together?
definitely work together. Both are crucial for developing full reading comprehension. You need both toolkits. The real skill for teachers and for learners themselves is knowing when to use which approach. Intensive. Great for short, dense texts where you need specifics, big instructions, train timetables, comparing product details.
Yep.
It's extensive. Perfect for longer stuff like articles, stories, books, where you want the big picture, and maybe just enjoy the journey.
So the question for you listening is, maybe, do you consciously switch gears depending on what you're reading? Or do you tend to read everything the same way? Interesting thought. Okay, another thing our source highlights is a common mix-up. The difference between reading skills and reading strategies. They sound similar, maybe, but they're actually quite distinct.
Yeah, it's a really important distinction. Let's try to simplify it. Think of skills as the things that become automatic, almost unconscious. Like once you're a skilled driver, you don't consciously think about every single tiny adjustment on the wheel, right? It just happens. Reading skills are like that. They're these cognitive abilities, decoding words, basic comprehension that, with enough practice, become effortless and automatic. They're kind of inherent in the reading process itself, very text-focused.
Okay, automatic software running in the background. Got it. So what are strategies then?
Strategies are the things you choose to do. They're conscious, deliberate actions you take when you hit a problem or have a specific goal in mind while reading.
Ah, like tools you pull out when needed.
Exactly. They're acquired abilities. They show that reading isn't passive, it's an active interaction. The reader brings their own thoughts, expectations, and goals to the text. Strategies are reader-oriented, mindful, effortful. They're about how you decide to tackle the text.
Right, so skills are what you can do automatically, strategies are what you choose to do deliberately.
Precisely. And the big picture takeaway here is you need both. Skills develop, sure, but teachers really need to explicitly teach strategies. That's how students learn to apply their skills effectively in different situations. It's like giving them a whole toolbox, a multitude of learning tools, as the source puts it, so they can become independent, flexible readers.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the specific tools, those strategies. Our source mentions several key ones, drawing from Cunningham and Allington. What are they?
Right, so first up, maybe the most fundamental, is activating background knowledge. Basically, what do you already know about this topic? The source calls it an essential prerequisite. It's about tapping into that existing knowledge, maybe forming mental images to see the story or the concept.
Yeah.
If you can connect what you're reading to something you already know, comprehension just skyrockets.
Makes sense. If you know nothing about quantum physics, reading an article on it is tough.
Exactly. Then there's predicting. This isn't just wild guessing, it's using that background knowledge to make educated guesses about what's coming next in the text. You can even do it before you start reading, just based on the title or pictures.
And the cool thing is, even if your prediction is wrong,
That's actually where the learning happens. When you encounter info that contradicts your prediction, your brain has to work to figure it out, to adjust your understanding. That conflict builds critical thinking. It makes reading active, not passive.
okay, what else?
Self-monitoring and self-correcting. These are the fix-up strategies. It's that little voice in your head that says, hang on, did that make sense?
Uh-huh. Knowing when you're lost.
Yeah, recognizing if you understand, and crucially knowing what to do if you don't, like rereading a sentence or slowing down or maybe looking back at a previous paragraph. Good readers do this constantly, often without realizing it.
Right. Then there's identifying main ideas and summarizing.
Yep, being able to sift through the text, figure out what's most important, and kind of ignore the less important details, building a mental framework. Summarizing is tied to that. Can you boil down the author's main point or the story's essence into your own words, getting the gist, the so what?
And finally, making inferences and questioning.
This is key for deeper understanding. Inferring is reading between the lines, using clues in the text plus your own knowledge to figure out things that aren't explicitly stated. And questioning the source really stresses the importance of students asking themselves questions as they read, not just answering the teacher's questions. Why did the character do that? What does this word mean in this context? That kind of internal dialogue.
It pushes you to think more deeply, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it acknowledges that readers bring their own interpretations, shaped by their beliefs and experiences.
So those are the strategies. But how do teachers actually, teach these? You can't just say, okay, infer. What are some practical methods?
Good question. The source gives several examples of instructional methods. One is using procedural prompts. These are like structured questions to guide students through a text, especially stories. Think story grammar. What's the setting? Who are the main characters? What problem did they face? How was it solved? What's the theme? It gives them a scaffold.
Like a checklist for thinking.
Sort of, yeah. Then there's the KWL method. Stands for Know, Wonder, Learn. Great for informational texts. Before reading, students brainstorm what they already know, K, about the topic, then what they wonder or want, W, to find out. After reading, they list what they learned, L.
Oh, I like that. Activates prior knowledge and sets a purpose.
Exactly. Another one is the interact procedure. This is designed for group discussions, especially around texts with, say, controversial ideas. It's a four-step thing. Students read silently, then they're given some statements based on the text, they predict how others in the group might react to those statements, and finally they discuss, using the text and their own knowledge to back up their points. Very interactive.
Get some talking and justifying their interpretations.
Right. And lastly, a simple but effective one. The 5 W's and H, who, what, when, where, why, and how. The suggestion is to pose these before reading. It guides their search for information, gets them predicting and looking for main ideas right from the start. Then you can have them generate their own WH questions too.
Okay, lots of practical tools there. Now, moving on slightly. Let's talk about skimming and scanning. These are often called reading techniques, maybe distinct from the broader strategies we just discussed.
Yeah, they're often seen as specific techniques you deploy for particular tasks. And people do sometimes confuse them with intensive, extensive reading.
So let's clarify. What exactly is skimming?
Skimming is all about speed and getting the general overview, the main gist of a text, without reading every word. You're trying to get a global impression quickly.
How do you actually do that effectively?
Well, you typically read the title, the introduction, and the first paragraph fully. They often contain the main idea or thesis. Then glance at any subheadings that give you the structure. For the body paragraphs, often just reading the first sentence, or maybe the last sentence if it seems to summarize, is enough.
Right, topic sentences.
Exactly. You also look for visual cues. Keywords like who, what, when, where, why, how. Proper nouns, any words that stand out like capitalized or unusual ones. Lists or numbered points. And things like italics or bold text. And definitely read the concluding paragraph, as it usually sums things up. It's like getting the quick map of the text.
Okay, so skimming is for the big picture. What about scanning then?
Scanning is different. Here, you are looking for something specific. You usually have a particular piece of information in mind, a name, a date, a number, a specific keyword before you even start.
Like looking up a phone number in a directory.
Perfect analogy. You're not reading for meaning, you're hunting for a target.
And how do you do that efficiently?
You need to hold a clear image of what you're looking for in your mind. Anticipate its form. Is it a number? A name starting with J. It helps to quickly understand how the text is organized. Yeah. Is it alphabetical? Chronological? That narrows your search. And crucially, you have to be willing to let your eyes float over large chunks of text without actually reading or understanding them. You just ignore everything until you spot your target word or phrase.
So, really different mental processes.
Very different. But what's interesting is how often we use them together. You might skim an article first to see if it's relevant to your question.
Decide if it's worth reading more closely.
Right. And if it is, then you might go back and scan it for the specific answer you need. So they complement each other. It just shows again how flexible good readers are, adapting their approach based on their purpose.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears to assessment. Checking understanding, measuring progress. It's obviously a massive part of teaching and learning. How does assessment work specifically for reading?
Yeah, assessment is crucial, as the source notes, quoting Snow and others. It tells us if the teaching is working, if the students are learning. Our source material, Drawing on Grabe, outlines 5 main areas or purposes for reading assessment.
5 areas. Okay, what are they?
First, there's assessing overall reading proficiency. This is often done with standardized tests. Think placement tests when you start a course, or big national exams used for policy decisions or evaluating curricula. big picture stuff.
Right, the large-scale view.
Second, assessing classroom learning. This is more like your typical end-of-unit test or achievement test. It measures what skills or knowledge students have picked up over a specific period, usually using materials similar to what they used in class. Summative.
Okay.
Third, and this is where things get really interesting and more modern, I suppose, is assessment for learning, or what the source calls support of students' learning.
Assessment for learning. How's that different?
It's about using assessment during the learning process to give immediate feedback, to guide instruction, and to get students actively involved in understanding their own progress. It's formative, ongoing, interactive, not just a grade at the end.
More of a continuous loop.
Exactly. Fourth is assessing curricular effectiveness, basically using the results from assessments to see if the reading curriculum itself is working and where it might need changes.
Using data to improve teaching.
Right. And fifth is assessment for research purposes, using classroom assessment data, maybe aggregated, to inform wider educational policies or research into reading development.
Okay, that framework is helpful. But that third one, assessment for learning, sounds like the most impactful for the actual students day-to-day. What does that look like in practice? What are teachers actually doing?
Yeah, it really shifts the focus, and the source gives lots of practical examples. Things like teachers simply waiting 3-5 seconds after asking a question before taking an answer. Seems small, but it gives everyone more thinking time.
Simple but effective.
Asking students to come up with their own test questions about a text they've read that forces them to think about what's important.
Oh, that's clever. Puts them in the teacher's shoes.
Moving away from just teacher Q&A towards more student-led discussions, teachers giving specific comments on assignments instead of just a grade, maybe even holding back the grade until the student responds to the comments.
Really focuses on the feedback then.
Yes. Using more why questions to push for deeper reasoning. Encouraging students to self-assess, to monitor their own understanding. Having students work in groups to figure out answers.
Collaboration, yeah.
Letting students set their own learning goals. Even having students assess each other's work, peer assessment, but with a focus on constructive comments.
Peer assessment. That can be tricky but powerful.
It can. And allowing students to redo tasks or quiz answers, maybe after getting help from peers. It's all about making assessment part of the learning, not just the end point.
Yeah, it really paints a picture of a much more dynamic, student-centered classroom. It's not just about testing recall, it's about building understanding and critical thinking. Empowering them, really. Okay, now we have to talk about technology. The internet, ICTs, information and communication technologies. It feels like this has completely changed the game for reading, hasn't it?
Oh, undoubtedly. The very idea of what reading means is expanding. Our source talks about new literacies. Think about reading online. It's often not linear. You're clicking links, jumping between pages, dealing with text mixed with video, audio, interactive elements.
Yeah, it demands different skills, like evaluating sources quickly, navigating non-linear paths.
Exactly. But a challenge mentions that sometimes teachers approach online reading the same way they approach a printed page. And they're really different beasts.
So what does the research say about using ICTs for reading in the classroom? Pros and cons.
Well, Eunice and others summarize some key points. On the advantage side, ICTs can definitely grab student interest. They allow for really effective peer feedback through collaborative tools. They foster interactivity. They can motivate students for related tasks like writing projects. They generally increase engagement with the language. They support communication and collaboration. They can make learning feel more active and meaningful. They can help develop independent work habits, potentially improve vocabulary, and allow students to easily publish and share their work. Lots of positives.
Okay, sounds pretty good. What about the downsides?
There are some potential disadvantages, too. Sometimes students might have a more lackadaisical attitude towards online work, maybe not take it as seriously. There's the issue of screen reading often being more superficial or faster paced. People tend to skim online more, which can lead to missing nuances or misunderstanding complex texts. Accuracy can suffer.
Right, the temptation to just skim everything.
Yeah. And from the teacher's side, they need a pretty good handle on the technology themselves to manage the learning effectively and troubleshoot problems.
So weighing it all up, what's the verdict?
The general conclusion seems to be that the advantages often outweigh the disadvantages, especially since students are usually pretty comfortable with tech anyway. The recommendation: a balanced approach. Don't throw out the paper books, but don't ignore the digital world either. Blend them. Use ICTs strategically where they offer real benefits, but keep using traditional texts too. Find the right mix for your students and your goals.
The best of both worlds. Makes sense. Okay, this has all been great theory, but let's make it super concrete. The source provides a really helpful example, applying these ideas to two different texts about astrology. How would a teacher approach this?
Right, this is where it all comes together. So imagine text one is just today's horoscope, Pisces. It's short, dense, with specific predictions.
Okay, like you'd find in a newspaper or online.
Exactly. Because it's short and packed with details you want to extract, a teacher would likely decide this is perfect for intensive reading. The goal is to squeeze out all the info.
Right, maximum detail.
So the strategies would kick in. Activate background knowledge. Most people know what a horoscope is. Make predictions. Is it going to be good news or bad news for Pisces today?
And excellent.
Then as they read, self-monitoring. Do I understand what run risks means in the context of work? Eliciting main ideas might involve underlining key phrases for different life areas like work, romance, health. And summarizing could be super brief, maybe just jotting down keywords next to those areas.
Yeah.
Work, run risks, romance, be brave.
Okay. And could you scan this text too?
Absolutely. Scanning would be ideal if a student only cared about, say, the prediction for money. They could just scan for that specific keyword.
Got it. Now contrast that with text 2, which is titled The Importance of Astrology. This sounds like a longer, more argumentative or explanatory piece.
Exactly. Much longer, likely presenting arguments or history. So for this one, extensive reading is probably more suitable. The goal is overall understanding, the big picture argument.
So different approach, same strategies though.
Largely the same strategies. Yes, background knowledge, predicting, self-monitoring, finding main ideas, summarizing, and definitely making inferences about the author's stance or implied meanings, but they'd be applied differently, focusing on the overall flow and argument rather than every single word.
And those instructional methods we talked about.
They'd fit well here. You could use procedural prompts to analyze the argument structure. The KWR method would be great before and after reading to frame understanding. Given that astrology can be controversial, the interact procedure could spark excellent discussion around statements pulled from the text, and the 5 W's and H could guide students in figuring out the author's purpose, evidence, and conclusions.
And skimming and scanning.
Both highly useful for a longer text like this. Skim it first to get the main drift, decide if you want to read it fully, then maybe scan later for specific arguments, names, or dates mentioned.
Wow, yeah. That example really shows how a teacher thinks on their feet, looking at the text, thinking about the goal, and then choosing the right type of reading, the right strategies, the right techniques and methods. It's not just one recipe, is it?
Not at all. It's a dynamic, reflective process.
Well, we have definitely covered a lot of ground today, from digging into intensive versus extensive reading, clarifying that key difference between automatic skills and conscious strategies. We explored a whole bunch of practical ways teachers can help students become better readers, and we even touched on how technology is changing what reading even looks like. It really has been a proper deep dive.
It really has. And zooming out for a second, I think the crucial thing to remember is that these insights, they're not just for language teachers or EFL students. They really touch on universal principles of how we all interact with written information, how we learn from text, how we assess information critically. It's relevant for everyone in today's world, swimming in text.
Absolutely. So maybe the final thought for you, our listener, is this. We live in this age of constant information overload, right? News feeds, emails, articles, social media. It never stops. How can you take some of these ideas we've talked about, like consciously choosing to skim for the gist versus scanning for a fact, or actively asking yourself why something is written the way it is, or connecting new info to what you already know? How can you use these consciously to become a more effective, more efficient, maybe even a more profound reader in your own life, whatever language you're reading in? It's really about taking charge of your own reading habits, isn't it? Adapting your approach to unlock that deeper understanding, one text at a time.